Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 418 of Pixels and Ink, the official podcast of CGMagazine, where we take a critical eye to gaming, comics, tech, and media. I'm your host today, Chris DeHoog, and I'm joined by our editor in chief, Brendan Fry,
Hello there, Chris.
and Jordan Biordi.
Yo,
How's it going, guys?
Good so far.
pretty
Nice, nice.
good. I would say that I've had the complete Brazil experience now. I watched the World Cup here. I went to Carnival, and I got dengue fever. So the big three.
What?
Yeah, I got
What?
dengue. That's why I was sick all last week. I had dengue fever.
I think it is a cold. I don't know.
Well, yeah, it's not that serious. Like my girlfriend's
Sounds
brother
scary.
apparently had it 3 times. So yeah, it just sounds scary, but it was like a fever, a rash, and like just like lethargy.
Sounds amazing. Good on you. I think.
It sucked, but apparently you're gonna get it at some point if being Brazilian.
I mean,
Feels like
sure.
it's probably a discussion to have about prevention, but I mean, I'm not
Yeah,
really an expert to talk about that. Yeah, it's been a little bit since we've been on the air, so we got a lot of stuff to catch up on.
we do.
Touch
Sorry
them
about
all.
that. There's been a lot going on.
Dengue.
Dengue, travel.
Yeah.
Brennan and Dana have been all over the place lately.
Yeah, that's
I tell
true.
you.
And then you have things planned apparently, which you can't
I
talk
have
about yet,
things
but you have
planned
things
to talk
planned.
about, but I might actually be back in time to record that day. So
Oh,
we'll see.
really?
I don't know. Back that day, so we'll see. Soon, Dana says. The ghost of Dana is chiming in. Yeah, we're gonna talk today. Start off today by talking about a bit of a strange, not strange, but a sea change at Bethesda.
Yeah.
As esteemed creator Shinji Mikami is leaving Tango DreamWorks, the
Mhm.
subsidiary of Bethesda that he helped found,
Hmm.
hot off the success of Hi-Fi Rush.
Yeah. That is, it's weird because that studio kind of started as kind of like a horror studio because it had Evil Within, and then it had Ghostwire Tokyo, and then it had Hi-Fi Rush, which is not at all like any of those other games we just listed.
Mhm. Shinji Mikami himself too, right? Like best known for Resident Evil. It's really
Yeah, he
weird.
yeah,
Strange
Now,
pivot
now, I
from like Evil Within, sorry, and then Ghostwire Tokyo last year, and then Hi-Fi Rush,
yeah,
very colorful and totally different.
yeah,
yeah. I mean, I like seeing creators go beyond, what they're known for. I mean, he also was one of the people that worked on. He's like the producer of Devil May Cry,
Mm.
hmm
Dino Crisis, Steel Battalion, Killer
Phoenix
7,
Wright.
God Hand,
Big hand at
Sh-
Capcom, yeah.
Shadow the Damned.
Oh, it's a
Uh,
great game.
so he did
All over
he
the
did
PS2 era, basically, yeah.
yeah. So he did a lot of stuff. But it is kind of just interesting to see what he'll do next. But also, was he the biggest name at that studio?
I would imagine so, just by the virtue that he's one of like the biggest names in gaming, right?
I mean,
Well,
in the
like
select
next to
circles, yeah.
like Shinji Mikami, like Kojima, the um,
Kiryu Yamaoka.
um thank you. I was getting all tongue tied. Like
I mean,
what
keep that up.
Suda 51, like though I feel like those are the names that like first come to mind when you kind of think of those like auteur like game creators or like game producers. So I would say he was probably the biggest.
Hmm.
Just because he had such a hand too, like in the company. Like he didn't just kind of like start the company and then it was kind of like, all right, I'm done
Yeah,
now.
he
Like
really worked
he was
hands on with a
still
lot of those games. Yeah.
mm-hmm. Now I can't remember if like while I was seeing this announcement, did they like say he's like entering retirement or he's just leaving the company and he
He's just leaving
maybe
the
might
company.
do like
I don't. There's no talk of retirement from what I've seen.
mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, if you go to cgmagonline.com, you can read the full story. But yeah, from what I understand, there's no talk of retirement. He's just stepping away from Tango GameWorks.
Maybe
And he's still
he's
there for a few months to go. Like he's not
Yeah.
gone yet. He's phasing out. over the
He's
next
not
few
just like,
months.
I'm bailing, peace out, y'all.
I wonder if like weird turmoil within the Microsoft owned Bethesda.
That is actually a good question.
Yeah, he's just
I mean,
decided to leave.
there's nobody, there's nobody to answer that, of course, but it is a good speculation.
I I I think right now a lot the gaming industry is kind of in flux right now because you have the big deal that's going on with Microsoft and Activision, which we can kind of touch on quickly. But you also have the fact that Microsoft just let go a lot of people,
Mm-hmm.
and the gaming industry is just generally changing. We're kind of going away from the strictly $69.99 sales model to a more subscription based model for most of the industry. There are still people that buy the day one game, but a lot of people are now just kind of waiting for it to come on the service like it is a Netflix type thing. Um, I don't know how that's going to change things, especially at Bethesda, where it is Microsoft and everything they release does launch day and date on Game Pass. So that kind of does change how people view buying a game or getting a game.
That and just like all those names that we mentioned earlier too, like that's just like a, you know, half of like the big names in Japanese game development. That whole generation of developer is getting up there now. Like Mikami
Yeah,
himself
Mm-hmm.
is 57, I believe, and
but that's not
um,
that old.
no, but I mean you are
No.
approaching
I,
retirement age technically, and
I don't. I feel that the concept of retirement age has kind of changed. Unless you're like working as like a bricklayer, you can work pretty late. You can work into your 70s in game development. I don't.
mm-hmm.
it's
I mean,
true.
you
Well,
might not want to. Depends what you're doing, really, right?
I kind of get what Chris is saying though, because it just reminded me like recently there was an interview too that Shigeru Miyamoto did, basically
Yeah, I was
kind of
gonna
Yes.
saying
say
like what like Nintendo will be like once like he's
Hmm.
done there, right? So it's like even him who's like probably what like well into his 70s now.
70. Yeah,
No, is he really?
70. Yeah,
um yeah, like you know what I mean, like yeah, eventually even though like to your point, Brendan, like I think there you're not totally wrong, like in game development, especially for like creators who kind of like even
Mhm.
like Miyamoto specifically, who kind of don't really work in development anymore and are kind of just more like
Idea
producing or
people.
like sort of like yeah like creative leads or whatever. But like at a certain point, even then you kind of just want to like enjoy your retirement and not have to
Oh
think
yeah.
about or focus on work,
I
that
mean,
kind of
it depends
mentality.
on what. It also depends on what you enjoy doing. Like some of these developers,
True.
that is what they find fun. That
Yeah.
is what they do. They if they weren't doing that, they'd be bored. That there's a lot of people like
Even
that.
I was even like I would say like culturally too, because I know like Japanese work culture is a lot different in terms of like when you should work,
Yeah.
when you should stop, kind of like compared to like Western ideologies about it. So
Oh,
there's a
one
bit of
hundred
things there,
percent.
but
It's a very different
um,
culture when you have. It is kind of part of who your identity is. Your what you produce and how
100%.
you help your team. So I can kind of see how that might change as these developers get older, but it also does depend on what they want out. Like, do they want to keep creating? They might do smaller studios. They might uh, step back and do kind of more just kind of like consulting type stuff. But I could see some of these developers working for a while longer. It just might not be they're the face of those companies. They might be just kind of step back and like, okay, the other people can take the reins. I'll give ideas and kind of bounce ideas off things, but I'm not going to be like a face anymore.
Yeah.
And I
yeah,
feel and Shinji Mikami on Tango Gameworks was very much the face of that studio.
yeah. It's there's a lot of creators out there that are kind of like in semi-retirement, like Hironobu Sakaguchi from Final Fantasy and SquareSoft, for example. Like
Yeah.
after he left SquareSoft, he founded his own company, but he's essentially semi-retired. Like they don't keep up a rigorous schedule of
Yeah.
projects.
Yeah.
I think they released like 4 or 5 games at Miss Walker, his studio, since he left in 2003.
Really.
So yeah, like, they're not keeping up a strict pace. So
Mm.
I think once you've kind of established yourself like Sakaguchi, Miyamoto, and Mikami have, like you can kind of coast for a while and kind of semi-retire, kind of, and like you say, dip your toes in where you want to pursue
Yeah.
the projects that you want to kind of pursue.
Mhm.
And then yeah, so we have like to come back to what I was starting to say there, like we have this cohort of game developers, at least in Japanese development and to a lesser extent in Western development, that are kind of reaching that retirement age, as the industry is shifting heavily towards digital and whole new
Yeah,
paradigms. It
that's true.
just talking about this kind of makes me realize that there could be quite a huge sea change coming in the way that games are made and who's making them coming
I
in like
also
the
think
next 5-10 years.
I think there's also going to be a sea change with like how people view games and how what they consider like what they consider the top tier like experience. There's a lot of been talk about like there's indie games and there's AAA, then there's the B level games that people don't talk about that much. But I think that is changing a lot. Indie studios are producing some really exciting things that it's hard. It has become hard to differentiate between an indie studio and AAA now, especially with some of like the more polished experiences. And even beyond that, you have like look at it this way: Stray was technically an indie game,
Yeah.
Hmm.
and that like 10 years ago that would have been considered a top tier AAA game. It's just the tools are becoming more democratized. There's going to be becoming more ways to release these things, and there's going to be more platforms to release them on. Also, the fact that well, the PS3 generation, eighth, that was eighth, right? Don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
They had limits with the fact that the hardware was complex. Every one of those systems was completely architected differently. Now it's simpler. Like the PS5 and the Xbox Series X are almost the same hardware. It's just different software on top of it and a little bit of different changes here or there. But if you develop for PC, it'll work on all those platforms. You might have a few different issues with the Xbox might not be able to do X or Y, but really they're similar.
Hmm.
So if you indie studios can do so much more than they could even 10 years ago, and even beyond that, how people get your games is different. Like Fortnite, for example, that is that if people keep talking about metaverse, that is a metaverse. That is where you go, you can play anything. It is tons of different modes, and it really is just more of a sandbox to build things on top of. Yes, there's a battle royale mode, but it's basically a showcase for Unreal Engine. And I think as gaming moves forward, you're going to see more of that kind of experience.
Hmm. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
actually
because
interesting
even
too. Like you're saying, it's they're essentially the same thing, but at the same time, game development cycles are paradoxically getting longer.
Yeah.
Like it's taking 6 to 7 years to
hmm
make a game. So by the time a new game, AAA game hits, it's kind of outdated or seems cliche or whatever because it's using tropes that writing
Yep.
wise that were
Oh, one
popular. Yeah,
100%. I'm seeing so much of that where you have games that like seemed like they were cutting edge when they first announced. Now you're like, that's been done. Like indie games have done that like 5 times before this point.
yeah,
I don't know how From Software has the development cycle it does because they've released a lot of stuff each generation, and I don't know how they do it. When other studios are producing 1 to 2 games a generation, they've produced like 3 or 4. Like the PS4 generation, how many like they had like there was 4 FromSoft games that generation, right?
I think so. Yeah, because between what like Demon Souls, Dark Souls, pretty sure they released a like one or two armored core. I know at least the 360 had like two
Yeah.
or three armored cores.
Mhm.
They were pumping them out.
So I mean, like I don't know. It depends on how your development is, what you're trying to do, and how you iterate on what you on the lessons you've learned. I think there are some studios that really can do that quickly. And yes, Dana wants armor.
I mean we all do, don't we?
Fair, but
One way or
yeah,
another.
I don't know. Do we see this changing? Like this is kind of a sign that there is a changing of the guard with a lot of these studios. Do we see it people moving away from working in the big studio system and moving to more indie, or how do we see it happening?
I honestly don't know because it's like it kind of still feels like at least from a business perspective
Mhm,
like you kind of have like indies that are either like self-funded or rely on like some of
mhm.
the publishers that are better known for working with indies like
Right.
Devolver or like even like
Annapurna.
Xseed, Annapurna, um or you have like the big AAA
Mhm.
like established companies that are always going to sort of like be there unless they really mess up and go under.
Yeah.
Like so you're always going to I think have that divide, but
Yeah.
it's like naturally you're gonna have it just because even too like kind of like to sort of like build on what you were saying, like it's there's a kind of like a difference in mentalities of how games are made. And we were talking about this I think the last time we recorded too, right?
Right. Right.
Like we're the AAA publishers are always going to sort of like make games that are a bit more safe. They're kind of following the trends
Mhm.
and sort of
Mhm.
delivering to a wide audience, where the indies are going to be take a little bit more risks and like and make experiences that are a bit more personal to them, and
Yeah.
like and cater to a more niche audience, but it's like they're delivering to the niche, right?
Yeah.
So whether or not they get the budgets to do that is always going to just depend on what like what publishers really willing to take a chance on them, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't think like look at like just recently too, there was that like that big update we wrote about for Phasmophobia, and I
Mhm.
was looking at it like just watching a little bit of gameplay, and even like I sort of like dove into a little bit, and it's like markedly different from like when you go back like 3-4 years to when that game
Mhm.
kind of like first came out and was a little, it was rough and janky and just the way it looked, to
Yeah.
like now it's like next level good. And they don't have like they it's a small team that made it. Like they don't have big like backing from any like
Mhm.
notable publisher. So like yeah, like Kinetic Games, they did it. They put the time in, and like
Mhm.
it's genuinely good now. But like you think like no AAA publisher or like no AAA studio really would have looked at a game like Phasmophobia, or like even like come up with that idea. Like
Yeah.
that just like that, because it almost seemed like it started as a streamer game, but like it's concept, the fact that like horror is considered a niche audience, so like
Right.
people aren't going to make it because they're not going to make a ton of money off of it. Like it never would have happened if it wasn't for an indie studio like with a genuine vision to make it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the AAA can't take those risks, right? Like the development cycle has become too long for them to
Mhm.
like waste 6 years on a gamble.
100%.
Hmm.
But like,
Yeah, no,
even look at like what's that new game from Atomic Heart? Yes,
mm,
that game has a lot of problems, but
Hmm.
that's technically an indie game. Let's take that a second to remember that.
Hmm. It's true.
That game looks like it might not have like the polish of like a BioShock, but it definitely has the scope of those sort of games. And the fact that it is done by a smaller studio is unfathomable, considering that is something you could not have imagined like 10 years ago, a small studio producing that game.
Wild Hearts was who
Not
developed
Wild
Wild Hearts?
Wild
Well,
Hearts was that's the
That-
different game.
Yeah,
yeah,
no, I'm
because
just thinking like
that
was
that
that a similar case?
was
Because that was a
Yeah, that
but
was
that was
technically an EA
yeah, in EA, and I was
oh,
gonna say
Koei
EA
Tecmo. Sorry, yeah,
published
Omega
it.
Force.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
I
but those are
I kept
that's
thinking
a
it
big
was more of
studio.
an indie type game when I saw it marketed and stuff like that. But I
Hmm.
No,
always
those
forget
are
it's
those
like
are
a
like some of the biggest studios in Japan. So no.
Yeah.
yeah, no,
Because
like
I'd say maybe the closest thing to it maybe is like Dauntless, if you're talking like an indie studio that kind of like
Yeah.
took a gamble on that kind of gameplay.
Didn't Dauntless get bought by Epic though?
Um, I believe because what was in the studio? Yeah, because Phoenix Labs, didn't Phoenix Labs get bought by Epic?
So I am looking this up, and we're gonna find it out. We are
I
looking it up
think
right now.
I could have swore it started off as like a oh no, it was I think it was distributed by Epic, but I don't think.
Garena bought it.
Okay.
I don't know what they are,
Yeah.
but they are legal. What? They're a publisher of League of Legends in Asia. Like they have money.
Weird. Yeah.
I don't sure, but they've been purchased by something that was bigger than them.
So yeah, so they were always doing okay, I think. but
Yeah,
still,
I don't
like
know who.
in terms of keeping the through line of the conversation, even
We're a
Phoenix
little
Lights
tangential. Yeah.
was kind of considered a like an indie studio that was kind of like pumping
Yeah.
out pretty, I would say, pretty high level games. Dauntless was, it wasn't like, you know, Monster Hunter World
Right.
level game, but it was still pretty good for a free to play game too. Like,
Oh yeah, 100%. Like I think the answer is we really got off tangent here, but as Shinji Mikami moving away, I don't necessarily that means think that he's getting out of gaming. He just might be stepping away from the system that he's kind of stuck in
yeah.
right now. He might do an indie studio. Who
Mhm.
knows what he might do? He might make books. I don't know. We don't know until he says so.
He'll be on hand.
But I could see a lot of these developers wanting to move away and do something of their own. Even look at Grasshopper. Suda 51 studio got bought by who bought that game? I forget, but when it was purchased, he kind of left, and now he's doing his own thing again. So I
Yeah, I
think
guess they want to stay mobile and
they want to
you know
be able to
flexible.
do the things they want, and as soon as they kind of feel constrained by the systems they're in, they move on, and that makes perfect sense. I think Miyamoto is one of the few that has stuck with the company he started with, but I think a lot of these developers they go where it gives them the freedom to do the things they want to do, and as soon as you can't do that, they'll
Mhm.
move on and find something you can.
It's very true of Nintendo in general. Like you don't
You know,
typically see the creators at Nintendo straying far.
no,
um,
they kind of stay with that company, and I don't know why they have that loyalty, but you know something, I appreciate they do.
yeah, no,
Mhm.
absolutely. It speaks something to the conditions at Nintendo. I think, at least for like the higher ups, the
Right.
driving creation and stuff. That stay with us and we'll let you do what you want, kind of.
Yeah.
Let you explore a little bit because yeah, very few people have left that like, and even like Metroid producer creator or I'm blanking on his name now, but he's like not at Nintendo, I believe, but he's kind of like close and he works with the studios on
He
the new
does, yeah.
titles, like Mercury Stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, once you don't really get out of Nintendo, which I guess is something for them. But
Exactly. But on that note, do we want to talk about the tangential story to this?
yeah, the tangential thing has come up also since Shinji Mikami announced his departure from his studio. This week, Square Enix announced that it's kind of absorbing Luminous Productions back into itself,
Hmm. So
which seems
it spun off from S Square. Is that how it originally worked?
yeah. So Luminous was the team from oh my god, I'm blanking on his name now. But the director of Final Fantasy 15, or the final
Okay.
final director of Final Fantasy 15, Luminous Productions was his studio, and they were laying the groundwork for Spoken before he left,
Hmm.
um, and it kind of went on without him after he left and created his own thing. And they've only really done well Final Fantasy 15 tangentially before they were called Luminous Productions, and then Forspoken, and now they're absorbed back into Square Enix. It sounds a lot more heavy than it really is, I think, because they were part of Square Enix anyways. Maybe not like officially, but they were like that close anyways. To kind of absorb them back in is feels like a technicality to me, but
Hmm.
Forspoken was really that polarizing, huh?
I don't.
mm,
I think the end. I think I feel people are
That's
just.
wait, polar. Well, it is polarizing. It is that they did polarize people,
They
whether
were
it
like, "We gave you
deserved to
one
be.
chance, and this is what you did. All right, come back to daddy."
Well, I mean, and again,
You made
it
that weird,
was
Jordan. You made that real weird.
yeah, that got weird. Um, I mean, it was kind of made for the director that left, right? Like it's
Hmm.
Mhm.
uh God, what the hell was his name? Usually this name rattles off my tongue here. Hajime Tabata.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, so like after he left, I mean, I'm kind of part of me is a little surprised they kept it separate, right? Like,
Yeah.
it they have like a weird spot as like one of Square Enix's studios, but yeah, I don't know. I don't really get the point of absorbing them when they already were part of it.
I feel it's a power move to show that Square Enix is taking the reins again, type thing.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I really don't like business wise. I don't know if it makes much sense. Um, but yeah, it feels like it's more of Square parent saying we know there are problems, we're trying to fix them, even if there necessarily aren't real problems.
Yeah, kind of I don't want to say saving face because that's there was a smear campaign against the game essentially, and it's not their fault. Like,
I
well,
don't
aside
think
from the
that
marketing, um,
I feel the marketing wasn't great, but that's I mean you can say that about any game. I don't feel that
Yeah,
was the problem with the game. I feel it was
because it reviewed well.
no, it reviewed fine. I don't think it
yeah,
reviewed
Yeah.
well. We gave it a good score, but there's a lot of people that like they hated aspects of it, and there's a lot of people that liked aspects of it. Like any game,
Hmm.
um, I just feel that people had it in their minds this was a problem, and then nothing anyone said could change it. And that's that kind of toxicity of the console war that is stupid, and no one needs to worry about that anymore. But it also kind of tied in with the fact that Sony was going against this Microsoft deal with Activision, and the Xbox fanboys were finding any reason to kind of jump onto Sony, and that was one of them.
that is too. And it kind of goes back to what I mentioned earlier with like the game development cycle taking so long. People were complaining about the dialogue and the trailers and stuff, and even once the game came out, people were trying to cherry pick lines of dialogue and say, "Oh, it's so bad, it's so cringy."
Mhm.
But then, like literally, comparing the script of Spider-Man, the PS4 slash PS5 title, if you compare the script of that game to Forspoken, it's a lot of the same tricks. It's a lot of the same narrative jokes.
Yeah,
People didn't complain about that, when Spider-Man came out. Um, but again, Spider-Man came out at around the time where this would have been starting production. So
yeah,
you're taking that 2017, 2018 dialogue and releasing it in 2023 at a time when people are kind of burned out on the whole Marvel model of dialogue and quipping and stuff like
Hmm.
that.
I
Yeah, it's
mean,
a
even look,
victim of the
even
development cycle partly.
I think even you're seeing that with Marvel movies as well, with just kind of getting slightly off topic here, but like how Ant-Man and Quantumania didn't do great, and people kind of are burned out on that Marvel formula. So if Forspoken is kind
Hmm.
of bringing forward that same kind of concept, I can see why people just it didn't click with a lot of people because of that.
Hmm.
If the trailers are kind of showing off that thing, it isn't kind of in vogue anymore, even though it was definitely in vogue when they kind of started things.
Yeah, if games could be released that quickly, if you could like have the time to release a AAA game on that kind of pinpoint accuracy, it would be a different story altogether. But I mean,
Mhm.
I appreciate at least that it tried to do something unique with open world games.
Yeah,
It's probably the most fun I had playing an open world game, as I said in my review, since like Breath of the Wild. Like, is the first game to
yeah,
kind of feel
Hmm.
unique in any way when it comes to open world games. Short of again, Spider Man. I mean, Spider Man is open world as well, but it was doing a similar mechanic that was established on the PS1 with the Activision Spider Man games or the
yeah.
Neversoft titles, just
Remember Neversoft? That
adapted.
was a company.
Yeah, that was the company. Speaking of
It was,
things that are
A
and
lot
gone,
of
now it's
Tony
part of Call of
Hawks.
Duty.
yeah, that's the biggest one of the biggest shames out there.
I think I have to say that I think as the industry becomes more consolidated, we are losing a lot of those unique concepts that kind of make
Hmm.
gaming interesting. Um, that's why I like seeing new studios form that kind of bring new ideas to the table. But when they go away, it's kind of like, oh, I guess we won't see that kind of risk again for a while because every time there's a risk, it doesn't sell as well as the re-upmaster of one of the games they did, and they just kind of say, ah, no, we're not doing that for a while, and that's sad because for this industry to actually be interesting and moving forward, you need to see something beyond just the latest remaster of a game that came out 5 years ago.
And open world game number 510.
Yeah, so many open world games.
Yeah, I was just thinking like when you said that, Brendan, about like kind of like consolidation, like it makes me wonder too, like with all of the stuff that's kind of been going on at Square Enix, like
Right.
whether or not like kind of just absorbing Luminous back into them, like having maybe like more stability for game design is something that they're like maybe like playing the long game for, because like I can almost I can confidently bet that they probably lost their shirt on all that NFT investment, and then they,
Yes.
opened and closed like 9 different live service games that nobody gave a shit about. So now it's like
Yeah.
maybe like this is just like them kind of like reevaluating and say, okay, like, we tried to make a quick buck, it didn't work, and now we need to like try and save face by getting like actual competent game developers back into our like main company and producing like actual video games.
I mean,
Yeah, they're
I
the
mean, if you follow like the Reddit trends, everyone's kind of speculating that Square Enix is trying to basically make themselves lean, so Sony will buy them, with especially with that Call of Duty, sort of Activision merger that's currently in the works that is still endlessly being struggled with. Because
percolating.
that
Yeah.
because it kind of, people are speculating that that's why they fire sailed all the IDOS stuff because they wanted to make themselves as lean and mean as possible, so it looks good on paper, so Sony can swoop in and make them
Just
part
pick
of
them up.
like one of the. I don't I don't know how much truth is in that. I know a lot of like video game insiders have said that's what they're trying to do, but how true is that? I don't know.
Hmm.
Square is still a massive conglomerate. I don't know how affordable they are. I mean, Chris would know better than I if that is something that would be something they'd look into, but
Market
yeah.
values aren't my forte, but I mean they have a great relationship with both Nintendo and Sony right now.
Yeah.
So I think if that was their intent, they'd have to have some caveats to it that we need to still be able to work with Nintendo.
I mean,
Um,
right now Sony's letting the MLB studio work with anyone. They're letting the Bungie is currently able to release on any platform they choose. So I guess it depends on what kind of deal they'd look to settle, because it looks like Bungie has said Sony's getting them the freedom to be independent. They might be owned by Sony, but they can release on any platform they choose. They don't need to do day and date for PS5. They just kind of are, that is their parent company. So
yeah, and that's enough, I think, that for them, yeah, right. Like they
Hmm.
don't need to clamp down, right? Because like that's the anti or competitive
and
aspect of
Yeah.
the acquisition is being like mine, like
I think also Sony's right now is trying to avoid looking like that, because
uh,
it's hard for them
Well,
to be like, you shouldn't let this Activision deal go through because they'll be anti-competitive, but we're going to lock in everything we have and they can't buy it.
well, it wasn't. Wouldn't it just be like smarter too? Because this is like a lot of the stuff that I feel like people were kind of talking about when Microsoft decided to buy like half the game studios in the
They
world.
bought a
Like
lot, yeah.
that like owning Bethesda and like having your name sort of like attached to it, like, and like game sales from Bethesda games would still kind of like go back to benefit Microsoft. So
Yeah.
releasing on every platform would just make better like fiscal sense, because like if a Bethesda game which is owned by Microsoft is selling on a PlayStation, who cares where it's selling? Like at the end of the day, dollars are dollars.
And I think you also have to look at the fact that the recent report was saying that Sony right now has sold, I think it's 30 million PS5s, and Microsoft has sold under 20 million
it's
Xbox
hard to
Series
hard to
Where
X.
tell with them because they obscure their numbers. They do not
They
release
do,
those.
yeah. But
where are people
that's what
getting PS5s?
but that's what like the numbers are saying right now, at least of what people can find.
Hmm.
So it'd be dumb to not release on PS5 if you have a studio.
Absolutely.
Like, it is one of the hottest platforms around. I still find it kind of obtuse to use. I don't like Sony's menu system, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
There's no perfect UI for a game console still. I
I
think like
think
we never
I
quite got there.
I think Xbox's
The
is
Wii
needs
would like to have a talk.
uh,
We
I
got
think
close. Wii U even got close.
I think Xbox's is good. I think they put way too many ads on the platform. I don't want
Yeah.
to be marketed to, especially if like, even if you have like the base level account, they market that thing. They market every new release they have hard on you. And sometimes, so like, I don't want to see what games I want to buy. I just want to play a game
Text me
and be
alone.
done with it. Yeah. And the fact you can't turn that stuff off, to me, is annoying, especially for consoles that cost $700. I don't want to have to be fighting with like the random ads for whatever nonsense Microsoft's pushing that day, be it a TV show or a random thing. I just want to play a game, and I think Sony's is a little less pushy.
Yeah, it's
But
more
even then,
naturally
yeah, you
integrated.
want to go to the store, you'll see ads, it's fine. But I don't want to see ads right start the system up. That's a little annoying and a little bit much. And I think Microsoft, could tone that back a bit, just a bit.
Yeah, definitely. I don't love their UI on the Xbox One at all because it's just yeah, it's just outdated. Nintendo came real close though. And then they took a big
Yeah.
step back because the Switch is
Oh yeah, the
so
Switch
bare
is.
bones. And
I mean, the Switch is kind of like the PS4. It feels kind of like how the PS4 is. It's just like one line of things.
It's much more simplistic.
PS4 at least had like themes and stuff, whereas like
Yeah,
the Switch took away like the awesome ambient music that the Wii and Wii U had
Yeah.
and all that stuff, and just made it just blank. Here it is.
I will say the fact that Sony has been promising folders on PS5 for years now, and it's still not here, is kind of bonkers.
State of
Like,
game
wh-
development, man, takes 6 years to make folders.
yeah.
Like, I just
Folders
want a
are tough,
folder.
man.
I
It
want
took
a
Epic
folder.
how long to get a shopping cart in the store?
God, so dumb.
Well, they have a wish list at least. That's something.
Yeah,
Because PS4 didn't have
Nintendo
it
still
for the longest
doesn't
time.
even have that much. You can't even have a shopping cart.
Anyways,
Just bring back the ambient music, Nintendo, please. I'm begging you.
That's all we want.
Because that was I would just leave the console on and listen to that. So
that's fair.
Oh, no,
It's pretty.
all the
amazing.
fun music, like the Me Shop, the Wii, like the Shop channel, like everything had fun music.
it was character. There was character.
Yeah.
Anyways, kind of touched on two potential topics. Where do you want to go next? Do you want to go to the Activision Microsoft saga?
Yeah, let's go to that. Let's just touch in with all the nonsense that's going on there.
It's hard to jump in on this one because so much happens every week. There's like big comments like we can't do this because of that, and
I mean,
they won't let
I'm
us
gonna.
do this.
I mean, I'm gonna just go over just some of the big points that I think are kind of worth noting. First, the shit poster that is that Activision executive that keeps shit posting on Twitter, and it's like that you're not helping your case, dude. Like, the woman that keeps putting she put like those memes about like why Sony's being mean to them and how like Microsoft should buy them.
Is she the one that was like, "Oh, look at how well The Last of Us is doing. We should get
Yeah.
to do we should get this thing to go through."
Yeah, she
Yeah,
did that. Did some other just straight up shit posting. And everyone's like, why? You are a highly paid executive. Maybe stop playing into trolls. Just saying.
It's a strategy.
I mean, it's a dumb concept. The fact that Sony doesn't make all the money from the Last of Us show, they make a licensing fee. That doesn't necessarily mean that that they suddenly have a bigger market share. Microsoft is still a bigger company. That them having a single TV show doesn't change that. Just because the Halo show didn't do great doesn't mean like those aren't. There's no correlation there.
I've got to find that quote because I was just this isn't the flex you think it is.
It's really not. It's just like, hey, something they've based a property on is doing well. They should let us buy a bigger company. What? Oh, they should let us be absorbed. Why? How does? I just don't see the logic there. They're not connected.
Yeah, it was. Well, shit posting is about as good a title as you can call it. Anything, actually. Yeah.
It's literally just like fanning. It's just fanning the flames of fanboyism, and it doesn't help anything. If they want to buy,
honestly, like a lot of the comments that have come out from Activision and Microsoft about the whole situation have just been had that same tone to me.
Yeah.
Okay, here it is. So hi at FTC. Did you catch last night's episode of The Last of Us? It was incredible. So flattery to your opponent. Okay.
There you go.
No wonder the show is breaking records. It's a true blockbuster, watched by tens of millions, blah, 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 blah. If you haven't already, you should check it out. You may already be particularly interested in the fact that just by Sony, blah, blah, blah. It's based on a Sony-based game. Why does this matter? The FTC has opposed the Microsoft Activision Blizzard deal on the grounds that Microsoft could suppress competition from rival consoles by leveraging Activision games. Yeah, basically saying like, hey, Microsoft can't do this. Why can Sony do it? Like,
because
you tried and failed with Halo, and it
yeah, that exists. People can watch it. They just choose not to.
In gaming, Sony is the first of us. Great pun. And they'll be just fine without the FTC's protection.
The FCC isn't protecting Sony; they're protecting consumers.
Yeah.
Like that's the biggest thing you have to understand here. So, like, there's a lot of people that would be upset and potentially be worried if this deal goes through. And there's been lots of things that the European Commission has also done to say, hey, if you spin off the Call of Duty division and make its own company, we'll let this through. And Microsoft's like, we can't do that. Okay. And then like the other one was Sony wanted in perpetuity, like basically for as long as Call of Duty exists, you have to allow it on Sony platforms. And Microsoft's like, nah, we're not doing that either.
Best they can do is 10 years. Yeah.
But my point is, Sony's very good at these in perpetuity deals because that's why they still have Spider-Man.
Mm.
Because they're basically like, yeah, as long as we make games for it, or sorry, as long as we make movies, we get those rights. And Marvel was dumb and agreed with that. And now it's part of Disney. They're like, we really want that property back.
Nuh-uh.
but
But
the,
even still, like even just like the way that they can have like shared rights, because it, like
Yeah.
it, like Sony definitely probably got the best end of that deal. But like
oh,
back in
100%.
those days, like with Marvel not knowing what they were doing in the movie department, they signed a lot of bad deals with people, right?
Yeah,
Like
like
if
the
even if
Fantastic Four one with Fox and stuff like that.
yeah, if Fox had managed to like do stuff with like Fantastic Four, with X-Men, with all the licenses they had, they might have been able to like hold on to
Yeah.
properties for longer than they did, right? Sony's just been
Exactly.
the smartest about it because they got the one character that like everyone really cares about.
I
But
might also throw it out there. They've got the one character that's easiest to make stories about.
true,
He's
He's like
one of the
and
most
he's
video
an
games.
average person.
Yeah.
He's an average person that has
Mhm.
understandable powers. He's not a god tier thing. He's just like, I'm a dude. I can throw webs. I'm cool. Done.
Tragic. He's Marvel's Batman. He's the most
Yeah.
marketable superhero they got.
I mean, Iron Man. No one thought was marketable. Disney or
Yeah.
Marvel Studios made it marketable. Marketable.
Sure. Well, a lot of their heroes now too are
Yeah.
marketable. But like, but getting so back to my thought before I lose it. It's like Disney was like smart to have kind of this like now this partnership with
Right.
them. Like Sony, sure, Sony still gets like most like licensing rights in terms of like films and gaming for Spider-Man, but it's not like
Yeah.
Marvel can't have their thing. Like
Yeah.
Microsoft is basically like not really seeing the forest for the trees here and saying like, well, if we can't have uh Call of Duty, then no one should have it. Like, why does Sony get to have it? It's like they signed the fucking deal. Like, it's
I'm also going to throw it out there that I'm not saying Sony is blameless in any of this. Let's be clear here. Sony's done shady stuff too.
sure.
They are known for making very anti-competitive deals. They're known for working on those exclusive, like this map is only for this one thing, like Hogwarts
Yeah.
Legacy gets that one mission that only is on Sony consoles. Again, who really cares? They're like one little mission that's like a
Well,
DLC was on, but
Spider-Man and the Martin Avengers, right? Like
yeah,
that was
Yeah.
kind of
but
shady.
I will say that even if Sony did not like say anything about this deal, there's a lot of reasons not to just push it through. Um, if Microsoft has one of the, I am not a huge Call of Duty fan, but it is one of the biggest properties right now in gaming.
Mhm.
So having that with Halo and all these other properties Microsoft already owns, and then also having it with all the Blizzard properties, all these other things, it gives Microsoft a major advantage in the gaming space, especially when they have Game Pass. If they're saying, um, on Game Pass, we're going to make sure Call of Duty is free with Game Pass. On Sony, you're going to have to buy it. Or like all the Blizzard properties are free on Game Pass, but on Sony platforms, you have to buy it. That is a major advantage that Sony
Mhm.
cannot compete with. That's a lot of
Massive
properties.
incentive.
Exactly. That's the bigger thing. I think that right now, that and the mobile like King and all those things are why
Yeah.
Microsoft wants these studios. They want to basically say, hey, suddenly we have some of the hottest properties on Game Pass right now. You can't get that anywhere else. That is such a major thing for Game Pass. it makes it so it's hard for people to say, "Oh, I'm not subscribing to Game Pass," because that $20 gives you so many games. Sony could try a lot of
Mhm.
things, but it's hard to compete with that sheer tonnage of what people want to play.
Well, that and also COD is predominantly a PlayStation franchise. Like
And
the
it's
majority of
Yeah.
basically
players are on PlayStation. So
it's basically what Microsoft is going to do is make it so they're going to steal that entire fan base and make them jump to Xbox because
mhm.
that's where they're going to release the exclusive. They're going to make exclusive gun, whatever they choose to do. If they get that, it means that suddenly there's an influx of people wanting to buy the Series S or the Series X.
And if they do throw COD onto Game Pass day one, whatever, that is such. I don't know. That seems like bad business to me. Like it's great marketing. It's a great strategy to get people invested, but you're just losing so much. Like they're throwing everything on Game Pass, and like it's not getting any profits for them.
I
Like
think
it,
I don't think it's getting profits right now, but it is. Microsoft is known or have been known to make it so they undercut everyone else, drive everyone else out of the industry, and then raise the price to where they want it. They've done that
Yeah.
with a lot of things, and I could see them doing it with Game Pass, where it's like $20 for now, like it's whatever 18.99, whatever it costs, 50, whatever. It different regions, different prices. But I could see them as soon as they get Call of Duty, as soon as they get something like it's now $30 a month, and
yeah,
people
they
will
could
pay
do
it.
that.
It is valuable enough for people. Like it's their games are now, they've already raised the price of their games. What are they now, like 80, $90?
Next gen stuff is 89
Yeah.
Canadian. Yeah,
Yeah. So I mean, $30 Canadian, I could see them doing that. It's still 4 months to pay for, or 3 months to pay for what COD would cost,
yeah,
even if you're
yeah.
just
No, that would
renting it.
be. That seems exactly like the long term MO for them, right? Like to be like, hey, we have the thing you want, and here it is, up that much
I
more.
mean, look at what like the charge of Office now. What is Office, like $35 a month, whatever it is?
Well,
It's
even
not
even the
cheap.
fact that Office is not a one and done like
No,
purchase,
exactly.
that in
Yeah.
itself is like outrageous. Um, but yeah, like I mean, that's been the strategy for a while. I think it's starting to burn them in this department though. Like I
I
really
mean,
feel
I've
like
looked.
they've lost all footing.
I think the games division right now has lost a lot of money. I think the higher ups at Microsoft might be getting a little bit antsy with what they're doing, and I think the days of 15.99 whatever is Game Pass right now are short lived. And it's one way or the other. If either this deal goes through or the deal doesn't, I see Game Pass going up in price. Either way,
Yeah. Well, and if the deal doesn't go through, I think it's going to be bad news for them in general. Like this.
I think they put too much eggs in this basket. They put too much, like showing what they've already been kind of like counting the dollars before they've been spent, or spending the dollars before they've been cashed. Whatever way, I'm bad at analogies today. Doesn't matter. But they've gone all in on Diablo 4. They've gone all in on um, Call of Duty. They've gone all in on all the things Activision's bringing to the table. If that suddenly doesn't go through, I could see there being a major shift in how Microsoft works with the Xbox. And I don't know if that's going to be bad or good for consumers, but I could see it them kind of either raising the price of the Xbox Series S or X, um, raising the price of Game Pass, or just slowly taking the games the games that people play a lot off Game Pass to make it so some of the new games are on there, or striking them out faster so people constantly having to buy them.
It's more of a bait and hook situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like their whole insistence on digital too is just I think that's going to bite them in the ass long
Yeah.
term too. Like, like this year they're starting to produce less physical games. Like if you don't
Yeah.
pre-order games with like your local retailer, you're probably not going to just be able to walk into a store and get them. Like it's just the way they're doing it. Um, there's advantages to digital and there's advantages to physical, but I think physical has for longevity, literally and figuratively in the
I
situation.
think
Like,
I think with the ways we've seen platforms collapse this year and last, um, the need for having physical games is more important than ever. Especially even physical media is more important than ever. HBO Max getting rid of some major cartoons that you physically cannot buy right now. You cannot watch those shows if you unless you pirate them. There's no way for you to watch them. Infinity Train is not available anywhere. Um, and I see that happening with games like Stadia. There are certain games on Stadia that just are not available anymore because they aren't at any of the platforms. and that platform was dead. So the
Same thing going
concept,
on with Nintendo this month too,
yeah,
when the 3DS Wii U shops shut down. Like,
yeah,
there's a lot of titles that are kind of going to be lost. Not a lot of like huge earth-shattering titles, but there's some stuff that's lost, like DLC for games that had substantial additions, like Fire Emblem Fates.
yeah,
The whole third campaign of that is a DLC only thing in English. There's physical Japanese editions that are complete, but otherwise, and the third
Mm.
like canon path of that game is lost if you don't already own it by the end of this month. Like,
yeah. And I
um,
feel that Microsoft is going to have some reckoning to do because I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I have no idea if this deal is going to go through or not. It seems like right now there's a lot of headwinds kind of stopping it. There's three different the UK, EU, and the US that are all kind of like maybe this needs to change. Something needs to change here. I don't think it's just Sony that is the problem. I think it is just there's a lot of issues with massive conglomerates because what you have is these companies coming out there buying up all this stuff and then shutting it all down, like shutting down studios, laying people off, reducing the things they produce, reducing how people can get them, and it doesn't help the consumer.
mhm.
And Microsoft has not really done anything other than like we're the small guy. Look at how small we are. I'm like, it's not a good tactic. It's not genuine. Like you can't be like we're the world's biggest company, but we're kind of small. No, you're not. You're
Bunch
worth
of
like
scrappy
200.
underdogs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
like
d- we
literally you.
we just happen to own the entire like or half the like
Yeah.
PC market, right? Like for
And
literal
more importantly,
non-gaming PCs.
we're the small guy. We just have $69 billion lying around to buy
Yeah,
something. Like,
and if the tables turned, Sony couldn't do the same thing either, right? Like, oh, we just have our huge TV departments and our movie production
like
companies and like all
we
this
have,
stuff.
we
We're
are
scrappy.
literally
Music.
Sony.
Yeah,
The amount of I didn't realize this until this deal went through. What was like an announced for Activision. Sony owns so much.
Hmm.
Like it isn't as big as Microsoft because it doesn't have like the cloud divisions or that the enterprise stuff, but it owns so many game studios. It owns so many movie studios. It owns so many like random electronics companies that you did not realize they did.
yeah,
And there's a reason why they're I think it's are they number one right now in gaming? They own just that many studios. Then it's Nintendo, then it's Microsoft. Because they have so many that you don't even think about. And like they own like so they have like 5 or 6 mobile game divisions. And they're all just weird like little things you'd never consider like Aniplex is part of Sony. I didn't even realize that, but like they have so many random games. They like that's the top of the game store. They make like $1 billion a year on that one game. Like how? But like so yes, Sony is not the underdog here either. Let's be clear. Um, but let's also be clear that neither is Microsoft.
No.
There's zero reason for any of these companies to be like, we're the small guy. Neither of them are small.
yeah.
Neither of them have any reason to own this much stuff. And to say otherwise is disingenuous.
It's like, well, we're the small, scrappy underdog. We were founded by one of the richest people in the world, who is
Yeah,
mostly known for being
Mm.
rich. But
that's what he's
you know,
known for, being
that's what
rich and like weird charity stuff.
weird philanthropy and conspiracy theories as well. But that was
Yeah,
like his claim to fame for a long time was he's the rich guy.
yeah,
He's that guy who created
Rich
the
tech
things that
guy.
we use for everything.
yeah. So,
Um,
but I do see Microsoft kind of tightening the belt on a lot of like the spending that the Xbox division has done. And what that means, I don't know. I think they still have a lot of money to burn. But I think that wallet is less deep than it used to be.
yeah. Speaking of like burning themselves with strategies too. One other thing that kind of came up with them recently or last week when it was confirmed that Baldur's Gate 3 was coming to PlayStation.
Yeah.
It this like Larian Studios, like the developer behind it, had to issue a statement saying like there is an Xbox thing coming,
Mm,
but we can't do it at the time of launch because we need to make sure it works on the Series X and S.
right.
And I
Yeah.
think the Series S is like it's looking like a big mistake for them to have made that in the first place.
I think
It
it was a
sounds
way to
Well,
get it was a way to get them in the door of like it's a cheaper console that kind of does the same thing the Series X does, but when it has almost was it half the power or 75% of the power,
Not enough.
They're
Yeah.
But
they're very different systems. That's like saying I have a mid-range PC and I have a giant monster of a PC back there. They can kind of play the same thing. Like, I guess they can.
In
I
theory,
think,
yeah.
but in that like situation, I think that the gamers TM really did blow it out of proportion because like with the Series X being somewhat like underpowered compared to the Series X, um it's not like the game like Baldur's Gate won't run on it. It
Yeah,
really was because they wanted split screen co-op on
Hmm.
it, and it was gonna like they just wanted to make sure it worked on the Series S. So
yeah,
it's like people kind of flipped it and made it seem like this is an outrage. They're basically saying that you people who bought an Xbox are getting the shaft. It's like, but they're not. They want to make sure that the game works for you. So
yeah.
what are you getting mad about?
It's more the
Yeah.
fact that because there's two platforms, if they could release on the Series X and not make it work on the Series S, I guess they could work, but that's not how it works. Like, that's in the Microsoft Store, it's both or none.
Mhm.
You could have it
Hmm.
work on you could have it work on just Xbox Series S and X and not any of the Xboxes before that, but you really can't differentiate because it's considered the same basic system.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
and having that caveat of, oh, you have to have it released on both systems, I think is going to be the problem. Yeah, like it's not that no one's saying that you made a bad decision by buying an Xbox,
No.
but there is an inherent disadvantage when you have to make a series like a like a Series X game, which is, the Series X is that much more powerful than the Series S.
Yeah.
You can't make that run on a smaller system that's essentially like a half step between the two generations. Like
Yeah, that's what
there
it
is an
is.
inherent technical roadblock there. That's
Mhm.
just what it is.
I
And
mean, Larian probably will get around it. They want to make sure they take the time to do it properly. And that's
Yeah.
fine. It isn't
yeah,
saying Xbox people don't get it. You suck. It's more of we want to take a few extra months to make sure that it's done properly. Because the worst thing you can do is release a game that, like on the Series S, it just barely functions. Because then everyone's going to be like,
Mhm.
"Why did you release this? How dare you release something so broken?" There has to be a choice here. They can delay it for everyone, or they can say, "Okay, we know it works on these two platforms right now. It kind of works in the Xbox Series X, but right now the Series S is just not quite there. We're going to take some time to make sure the co-op works, or that one option might be disabled on that Series S, and that would just make people upset. No one wants that.
yeah,
See,
and
because
like the more malicious part of me thinks like, oh, maybe this was part of the plan when they made the Series S. Is like, oh, we have this, we throw this roadblock up. We like maybe we're not beating Sony going into this generation, but if we throw this little roadblock up, maybe it's going to stop a few multi-platform games or throw some wrenches and things because it was speculated that this kind of thing happened or this kind of thing held Gotham Knights back.
Yeah,
um the like it didn't launch quite the state that it should have launched in because they were trying to get around the Series S or whatever. That was the theory going around.
I think the
but
answer is that's true. If you can spec for top end PCs. The PS5 is kind of a top end PC or a high to mid range PC, and Series X is also the same. As soon as you throw Series S in there, it is a completely different range. And consoles don't really let you say, well, I want to turn like the visuals down in this one. You can't pick and choose quite as well as you can on a PC, so you have to make choices. And because Microsoft kind of has those two platforms, it's like how when the PS5 and the Series X first launched, when you had that cross-gen
mhm.
game, so you had games that were PS4 and PS5, that made it so it's harder. So you had that one game that it felt restricted, and you had the one that was like the top end way to play. And that's what we're heading right now. Even if it is just for the next gen stuff, because that have that half step system in there that's kind of sitting between everything, it throws so
Like
many wrenches in the gears to make everything run smoothly.
Yeah.
my question is, I guess it's the got two thoughts. So
Okay.
like, but like, because you know, I guess maybe I wasn't paying attention as much as I should have. Like when Xbox announced the Series S slash X, like did they
Mhm.
flat out say in the beginning that it's like a less powerful system, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
gonna be cheaper? So it's like that's where the
Well,
caveat is. Like,
they market it as if an entry point to Xbox. Like, it is more powerful than the One X. It does more things. It
but it's not
basically
as powerful as the
it's your
X.
doorway. It's if you want to have a second TV or you're just getting into gaming, the Series X is the way to go. If you're really kind of wanting the best of the best, the Series X is the way to go.
It's a
Because
great budget solution. Like if you're
Yeah,
the kind of gamer that only has Game Pass,
that's
mhm.
it's
great.
great because it's a cheaper option. They had it down even cheaper at Black Friday last year.
I mean, right
It's
now,
great for that, but
even like Verizon right now, if you're a Verizon customer in the US, you can get a Series S for $150.
really,
That's
Yeah,
bonkers.
because
Yeah,
like so like this is why it seems weird to me like that it's like that a that there's like such an outrage, and b that this would be kind of like any kind of tactical move, because like to me it feels very synonymous with like games that get developed for like modern consoles and the Switch,
yeah,
like Doom Eternal, right? Doom Eternal came out on March of
yeah.
2020. I can't believe that internally there wasn't conversations like, okay, we're gonna make it for PS4 and Xbox One, and we'll see how it does. Maybe we can talk to Nintendo in a couple months and see if they want it. Like, it's like they had to have known from the development phase like that it was also going to go to Switch. The Switch version didn't come out till December because obviously Bethesda and
Yeah.
Panic Button needed the time to make the game work on the Switch
Yeah.
hardware, right? So it's like if you have a console that the developer and the consumer know is like less powerful than even like kind of like to what Chris was saying, right? It's like that it's annoying because like it's coming out on Xbox, and like but like people who got the S have to wait a little bit for a second feature, because I can't imagine the game's not going to launch with a single player intact, like, or I guess no, sorry, I'm confusing myself now. Even sorry, so even with a delay, right? Even with a
Yeah.
delay, just to make sure it works so that everything works properly, it's like, yeah, I can see that there maybe is frustration because it's like it came out on Xbox, but my Xbox can't run it yet. Like,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it's like, but I bought it knowing that it was less powerful hardware than the X. So it's like,
But people don't.
why?
Okay, Jordan.
It's baffling.
Jordan. People don't like. Do you really know what a teraflop is? Probably not.
Yes, it's a flop of Terra.
It is floating point operations completed per second. It's a complex
Is that
formula.
is that what it is? Actually,
Yeah.
oh, so it's an acronym.
No, well, I mean, yes, I believe it is an acronym, but it's floating point Yeah,
Okay.
that's what it stands. Yeah. Anyways, what did you
The
think?
average person doesn't know that. Okay, I get it.
That's my point. That is all I was saying. So when Microsoft says this one's this many teraflops, this one's this many teraflops, you don't
Everyone's like,
really
ooh.
you don't really know what that means.
64 bits, you say?
it's basically like me buying a car. Like, oh yeah, you gotta have that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds good, but it doesn't for the average person. It does mean something, but the average person doesn't know what that means. Like,
I get that, but it's just like even at a basic level, right? Like without knowing how many teraflops one has over the other. If Microsoft flat
but
out
also
said when they
Microsoft
launched
said
this thing,
it'll run everything the Xbox Series X can do, just it'll have some limitations. That is what they said.
but if they said it has limitations, you gotta if that's in the brain, then this is where the limitations start. Maybe that people haven't like run up to it
No,
yet. That's the
people
problem.
think about it this way. People think of it as like this: you have the Mustang, and you have like the top end Mustang or the entry level Mustang. They're both Mustangs. They both go fast. You don't really understand what the difference between the 6-cylinder Mustang is over the 8-cylinder Mustang. You just know they both go fast. It's not to use. You look at like, oh, that guy's drag racing me better than I am doing. Maybe there's something different with my car. People just look at the type of thing it is,
What they get when they get it.
Yes.
Plus, like they're not leading the marketing with it's got restrictions. They're leading it with like it's a compromise. It's your budget. It's your entry level model.
Yeah.
Well, even then, they're not even saying it's a compromise. They're saying this is the Xbox you get for your family. They're just basically saying,
Yeah.
people just think, oh, it's slightly smaller. Sure, it's a smaller Xbox. I get it. cool.
I genuinely thought that the Series S was like the like PlayStation 5 digital version. Like it's the same basic console. It
And
doesn't
Jordan,
have a disc drive in it.
you work in the industry, and
I
that's what
don't
you think.
pay attention to these.
But
Xbox is not on his radar, I guess. Yeah.
my
No,
point is,
it's not
you
really.
work in you work in the industry. You've seen this stuff, and you think that. Imagine the mom that's going to the store. She's just like, I want to get an Xbox for my kid. Oh, there's two of them. I'll get the cheaper one. He doesn't need that disc
Yeah,
drive. Or
I get what you're saying. Yeah,
what's the best Nintendo? Like
yeah.
yeah.
it's that
The
syndrome.
average person, yes, there are people that know, because yes,
Well,
people that they look at the teraflops, they say that one has bigger numbers.
and
If the average mom's going to GameStop and saying, I want an Xbox for my kid, the guy at the store is saying, we have these two ones you can go with. This one's 600, this one's 350. This one
mhm.
just doesn't have a disk drive, it's a little less, it does a little less. They're like, I'll go with that
Well,
one. My kid doesn't need to do that extra stuff.
that's but like I think like kind of like to my point and to like what you're saying, like that's why I felt like there was this confusion because like I I kind of remember watching like the announcements for the Series
Yeah.
X and the S and you know alongside like when the PS5 got announced too. I genuinely don't remember them saying that the S was like a lesser console. Like I said, like I thought it was comparative to the PS5 digital, where it's just like it doesn't have a disc drive. It's more like a you know a cheaper system. It's more just for like your digital downloads for people who want to just like kind of get into gaming, but like not have all this extra stuff with the
And
disc
that's
drives and
And if you go to a GameStop, that's how the
that's
teller.
what they're
I
gonna
mean,
tell you.
I don't know what all of the tellers do. I've been to GameStops, and that's what they've described it as. I know, as someone that works in the industry, there is more than that, but it's hard to. You're not going to tell the average person that comes in, this one is this many teraflops, and this one is this many teraflops. You want to do
Mhm.
this? No one's going to say that. They're going to say this one does a bit
Yeah.
more. That one is a disk drive. There you go. Like if you
Or
go look at,
this one's 380 and that one's 600.
Yeah.
yeah, they
That's
look
Well,
at the
that's
price. They
something
say
different
this
for
is
a lot
different.
of people too.
not even just like your average GameStop employee. The fact that even like the console manufacturer like didn't really make it clear is like
I mean,
because you know why, because the whole thing too is that like it's like compare it to the Switch, right? The
okay, sure.
Switch has has three models. All of them are basically the same. Like, and Nintendo, when the OLED got announced and people were kind of speculating that, oh, this is the Switch Pro, whatever, like Nintendo made no like you know made no assumptions to not to say like this isn't a more powerful console. Like we're telling you it's just a better screen, a better kickstand, and like that's all it is. It's an OLED screen. It's not an enhanced console. The Switch Lite, more or less the same console, but you can't plug it into a TV. You can't take the Joy Cons off. Like, but it is the internal components are basically the exact same. Like
Okay,
there is
I
no
think Jordan.
technical difference.
Jordan, I think you're giving Nintendo too much credit. I think even when that first came out, there were people like tearing down the Switch OLED, like maybe it's a different chip, and they're just not saying.
Well,
So
Yeah,
you
but
know,
people are gonna do that. But
but
tinfoil gonna
Nintendo,
tinfoil, yeah.
but Nintendo didn't say it's not the same. They didn't. They said this is the new Switch. It has an OLED screen. They just didn't talk about the power. They didn't say this has no more power. They just said these are the new features. People then said maybe it has more power. It's using new chips. Maybe it does. Like they
To be
weren't.
fair, there was gasoline poured on them beforehand when they were
Yes,
like, "Oh, there's rumors of the Pro system coming." Like, "Oh, they're dev
th-
because
kits
and
didn't they
for
put out a
the
press
HD
release?
system." And
I
yeah,
the press
vaguely
release,
remember them
they never said
saying,
this is not more powerful. They just said the new features. Ergo, they didn't announce more power. It's assumed that there is no more
mhm,
power. But Microsoft didn't say they kind of talked about a market for the different things. They didn't talk
mhm.
about why, in simple terms, why the X is more powerful than the S. Yes, there is a little like sheet you can say, I know this one has this many teraflops, this one has this many teraflops. But when you're talking about the people it's aimed for, that doesn't really give the full picture. Yes, you can look at a bunch of numbers, but if you're the average person that buys consoles isn't the same people that average people that buy PCs. PCs look at numbers. They want to say that
Mhm.
video card is better than this video card because these numbers are higher. The people that buy consoles, especially consoles that are aimed about $300 to $400 range compared to the $700 range ones, are looking at it. Why is this one cheaper? Oh, it has a few less things. That's fine. My 15-year-old doesn't care.
Mhm.
Or I don't
He
care
might,
on his behalf. Yeah, like
yes, exactly. That's the answer, right? Um, but as such, you have to take it with a grain of salt that yes, they might have said these are the differences. The average person doesn't know what that means, like how Apple does.
Mhm.
Like there's 4 different versions or 3 different versions of the iPhone. You just there are technically different versions in the power they have, the cameras, but most people say this is the one with the good camera, this one with this size. They break it down to simple terms. The simpler it is, the best, the better the vast amount of people can buy it. If you say this is the good one, this is the less good one, they're like, why is it less good? And they don't really want to look at numbers. You're kind of stuck. That's all you can really do.
plus, I mean, Apple does himself a big favor by making the name of the iPhone model
Yeah,
clear.
yeah.
It's the
This is
Pro.
the
It's the Pro
max.
Max. Like Pro Max is kind of clunky, but at least it gets the point across.
This, yeah. Then the
Xbox's naming
regular one,
conventions have always been baffling to people, to the average person.
like
It was like the
one
One
X,
X, One X,
Series S, Series. Yeah,
Series
like,
S.
what does that all mean? It's all nonsense. People just think that one's the small one, one's the big one. I want
Yeah.
one that's white. That one's white. I want the white one.
The
Like
Series
it,
S has the smaller hard drive, so it's called the Series S.
yeah.
And
Like there's so
Yeah.
it's so
S is
hard.
for small.
It's so hard to. I mean, we're really beating a dead horse here, but it is really
Yeah.
hard.
just giving it.
Uh, yes, that's true.
What's that?
Sure. I don't know. That is this one. Here, I'm going to put it on the stream.
Oh.
You know what?
On
I
blast.
think maybe I got like I don't know if I had like a Mandela effect. I think I could have swore I saw like a tweet or something from Nintendo that basically like they laid out because people were saying like, is
No,
this a more
there
powerful
was
system? Is blah blah blah.
there
And
there was writers like us saying this is not more
yeah,
powerful, but I don't
I
think
could have
Nintendo ever said
swore.
this is more powerful. All that's happened was Nintendo says these are the new features, and then GameStop or us say these are the new features. It is not more powerful.
Yeah,
It's
I mean
using the
that's why
same
it's
chip.
maybe I fabricated a memory because I could have swore like they clarified it, and I kind of remember being like, okay, like there you go, like good on them. Like they're not, they're not leaving anything up to chance, right? They're
Any of
basically
the
laying out that it's not different.
any of these systems, you're always reaching the point where you can make it as technical as you want, and that's going to appeal to the people that love technical descriptions. But unless you make it understandable, saying this is the better one than this, people don't know. They think it's minor changes,
Hmm.
minor differences, smaller hard drive, whatever. At least it's not like 10 SKUs like the Xbox One S, where it had different versions. But there's a terabyte version of the One S. There's also a 512. There was so many different things. There's also a digital One S. Um,
Yeah.
so at least they're not doing that. Um, but unless you make it as dead simple as possible, the average person is not going to put the research in. And that's, I mean, you could argue they should, but
Yeah,
most people,
that's true. That's true
Oh,
for
but
any
that's
industry, though. Like
yeah,
again, to go back
yeah,
to my
but
joke earlier about me buying a car. Like, how many people buy a car in a year and have no idea what they're signing off on,
or
like
TVs.
spec wise?
Let's go with TVs for a second. I mean, does the average person know what the difference between QLED, LED, OLED, all
Refresh
these different,
rates.
yeah, like the average person just says,
mhm.
oh, that's a 4K TV. That one looks pretty. I'll get that. They don't realize that there's going to be um, there's going to be difference with how it plays those games. What are the refresh rates? Will it work with the
Yeah,
Series X?
refresh
Like, there's so
rates.
many different things in like all these devices that if you don't know what you're looking for, you can easily end up with something that is not going to do what you want it to do. And same way with consoles. If as soon as the console becomes, it isn't direct, like this is the pro or this is the standard, it's always going to have that obfuscation that makes it so it's hard for the average consumer to know what it can and what it
Yeah,
can't do.
Yeah, and to kind of come back to it too, like that. This is what I was saying earlier. Like this is why Microsoft has done themselves no favors. It's hard to hit like to take them seriously. They're like, oh, boo hoo for us. It's It's like you threw this roadblock on, and you said you need to make things for our half step system
Yep.
that is deliberately less powerful, and that has to be like has to run on both systems, or nothing. And that's just going to cause more problems for them down the line. Whereas Sony at least was prudent enough to like, if they wanted to have that budget option out there, sure, take the disc drive out, but it's still the same base model, much like the
Hmm.
Switch. You can still
It-
play the same games on it.
and that's the difference with the base model PS5 compared to the like full on PS5. Other than disk drive, it's the exact same console. I think the digital one has less hard drive. Is that right?
I think it's the same hard drive actually off the top
Oh,
of my head.
Yeah.
literally just
I
disk
know
drive.
there's a small physical difference because there's different plates for the digital,
Yeah,
like those colored plates they put out last year. There's
yeah,
different digital
It's
versus
because it's like a
standard
thinner
ones.
yeah.
console, right?
Yeah,
Spelled.
like you just don't
Because
have
it
that
doesn't have the
slot. You don't
little.
have the eject button, and that's
Yeah.
basically the same system otherwise.
But yeah, I mean that's the way to do it. But Microsoft wanted to have that entry level console that was that half measure that could get more people into the door. Like the PS5 digital is only like what is it, like $100 difference? There's not that much difference between the two.
150-ish, I think. I forget off the
Okay,
top of my head
okay.
on that one,
Mhm.
but
But like the Xbox Series X compared to the Series S is almost like half the price. It's a markedly different
it's a good
price.
chunk. Yeah,
Big
the
step.
Series S
Yeah.
is 600, or Series X is 600, and then the Series S is 380 or something like that.
Yeah,
And
but that's
they were selling it for I saw it for 300 at one point around Boxing
yeah,
Day.
and I've seen it. And as I said, in the States right now, if you're a Verizon customer, you can get it at $150. That is a very different price than a $600 console.
Yeah, I mean,
So
and again, that cynical part of me is like, oh, they did this like deliberately just to kind of stop Sony by
I
association.
don't
But
I don't
like,
think they did that. I think it's more of they wanted to have that foot in the door that makes Xbox hard to resist. Like it's like, oh, Game
yeah,
Pass exists. I can just jump in, play all my games, and it's going to work with everything. I'm down.
thing
I
is,
want it. I want
I think
yeah.
they would have been better served by making one system at a cheaper rate, and play it with things they already have in place. Like they have the all access program where you can finance the Xbox. That's
Yeah.
baked into their economy. If you put the Series X out like $100 cheaper, take the S off the market, so you're not eating caught like eating loss on every system you make there too.
I
I
think it
think it would
would.
have been more prudent for them in
I
the
think the
end,
better
but
thing. I agree. I think they should have done the same thing that Sony did. Maybe make a version of the X that's like cheaper by like no hard drive, smaller, or sorry, no disk drive, smaller hard drive, and like make it like instead of 380, make it so it's like 450.
yeah,
And they could probably have made that happen. They're losing money on each console either way. Make it so both consoles have equal power. Because let's be honest, the chip is not the biggest cost in that system.
yeah.
Yes, it's a cost, but putting the Series X chip in there over the Series S chip, the cost to Microsoft is probably not that much more. They probably could have done something that allows the systems to be basically comparable without they finding ways to like cut the cost, like the hard drive, make it like a 128 gig hard drive. I don't care. They could have done something. So you need to buy those extra external hard drives, or you need to do all this other stuff to get it to work, but it makes it the foot in the door of a console that is equal to the big brother. And I think that would have been the better way to do it. Yes, the Series S is a great system. You just want to get a thing because it's going to have everything the Series X has, but Microsoft also shot themselves in the foot because it means that there's going to be two SKUs, and that means there's two SKUs of every Xbox Series S X game you do put out there that will have vastly different requirements.
Like not to mention, too, like I've seen a fair share of like buyer's remorse being like, "Oh, I bought this thing and I got to upgrade to the Series X anyways because it doesn't do all the things I want it to do." Or
Yeah.
I've even seen that with the Series X in general, being like, "There's nothing on this I can't play elsewhere.
Yeah.
I have a gaming PC already. Like this is redundant to me." Like, yeah, I don't know. It's Microsoft's in a weird spot, but it's also hard to feel sorry for them when they're asking for it through all the proceedings to be like, "Oh, let us go through with this because look, woe was us." But like, you put yourself here
Yeah.
also.
I
Uh,
agree. That was a little bit of a tangent. Shall we wrap up with the final story, maybe the Destiny thing?
yeah. So Destiny is our topic here is Destiny is back. Destiny's new expansion Lightfall came out on Tuesday, went live,
Mhm.
and brings with it some huge. I logged in. I was actually as a veteran of the game who's been with it since basically D1 launched. I was amazed actually at some of the stuff they changed. Brendan, were you checking it out as well?
I jumped in quickly, but I've had no time to play games.
Well, that's always a factor, I know.
What is this
Yeah,
gaming you speak of?
we should really make a magazine about this gaming thing. I don't know.
Weird, I know,
Yeah.
right? Maybe print. Maybe you can read it.
Like a bitch. Wow. Comment section fire tonight. Um, anyways, yeah. Destiny has really done some big revisions in terms of like quality of life features.
Mhm.
You finally got like loadouts, so you can customize your loadout based on what you want to do, like power wise. It was always kind of a hassle. Frankly, I just didn't even bother with it. I just kind of stuck in my lane and didn't really
And this is
min
the
max anything.
last. This is the last expansion for Destiny 2, or is there one after this?
So they're taking a lot of notes from Final Fantasy 14, and
Okay.
they're saying that the current storyline up to this point, it's been like the saga of Light and Dark or whatever, something like
Okay.
that.
Mhm.
And the next expansion next year, the final shape is the last part of that.
Okay. But they're not
Kind of like
necessarily saying. So they're not saying that's the end of Destiny 2. They're just saying that's the end of this chapter of Destiny
that's the
2.
end of
Is
the
it?
story. I don't know if there's going to be Destiny 3 beyond that. I think they want to avoid that if they can.
So basically, make
But
it so this is the next chapter. Like, do kind of like what Warframe or all those any kind of live service type games do.
Mhm.
yeah, and again, to put it in like Final Fantasy 14 perspective, it's basically the Endwalker of Destiny, where like Endwalker was the
Okay.
culmination of that story up to that point, and they've started
Right.
laying new foundations for beyond that.
Right. Okay.
So narratively, that's what's going on with Destiny, is that they're building this is the penultimate arc. They're adding like a new darkness class, which is thematically opposed to the powers you start out with,
Now,
but a little more neutral.
just on that note, does this release as a full price game? Does it release as a $30 game? What is the, because I know most of Destiny up to this point is free, or how does that work?
I was gonna say, did it
So
not go free to play or something?
this is where I have a bit of a weird perspective, because, like I said, I've been playing Destiny since I got my PS4 just after Destiny 1 came out.
Right.
So like I've been buying the yearly releases and stuff like that. So it's a bit of a weird perspective to me, as I'm firmly in the trenches here. So it went
Right.
free to play. And if I believe the expansion pack for Lightfall is about $65, I believe it is
Okay. So it's
Canadian.
it's almost a full price game.
Almost the full price. It's the same kind of price that Square Enix releases like Crisis Core and Theater Rhythm at.
Right. Right.
It's that
And you have
compromised price
and you
point.
get all the expansions up to this point. How does that work?
So now that's the blind spot I've got as a
Okay.
someone who's been buying it every year, right? They've effectively been ringing me every year for the full price of the game.
Right. Right. Fair enough.
So I don't have a great perspective on that, but they do also still sell some of the older expansions. Um, so the first few years of the game were basically added to that free to play thing,
Okay.
and a lot of it was sunsetted. Like the original raid from when the Destiny 2 came out was just not available. They took it
Okay.
off, and now it kind of makes sense because the villain from that raid is back in the story in a big way. So like he
Okay.
was off for story reasons, like inaccessible for those purposes. Um,
Okay. So there's a lot of, okay. So Lightfall is for sale. Then they have the Legacy Collection. I'm guessing that's all the expansions before Lightfall.
mhm.
Oh no, then they have the Witch Queen, Shadowkeep. But the Witch Queen is now like $15, and Shadowkeep is like 8.
Yeah, Witch Queen's on sale because like that was last year's expansion.
Right.
So
So
they
that's
marked it down.
that's come down quite heavily. And then the Legacy Collection, it seems like it includes a few expansions in there.
Plus, they
Yeah,
also
we
did a thing where you could get just like exotic items from previous seasons that weren't
okay.
available anymore. Like you could just buy a pack if you're a new player and just get access to those things.
Okay. So if you don't
Um,
want to, if you just want to jump in, you can just you get the base game for free, and you can get this expansion and basically have what you need to just jump into the storyline.
and again, Final Fantasy 14 comparison, it's got like that free trial basically, like where you get
Okay.
to do up to so much just to try. They get you hooked on that much,
Right.
hoping that you'll buy the $65 expansion, which um I believe you'd probably be better off with like the higher level that comes with the season pass, because then you get the extra stuff for the whole year.
Right.
But that is the state of games that we're in, where we need to worry about things like that.
Okay. So the
Um,
Legacy Collection includes the Witch Queen, Beyond Light, and Shadowkeep. That is what the Legacy Collection has, and then everything
mhm.
before that seems to be part of like free.
either part of free or sunsetted currently,
Yeah.
like currently inaccessible. Um, to raw loose points in our YouTube chat, it does indeed look like it's inspired by the disco era. So there's a brand new era or brand new area, which is kind of a big thing for the game. We haven't really had entirely new section like this before, or not
Right.
before, but for a long time. It's always been based off of like existing enemies. But there's a whole new city that's a huge atmospheric shift for the
Right.
game. It's like a bright neon city.
And Witch
Um,
Queen was the kind of the dark chapter. Is that right?
Yeah, Witch Queen was based off of the Hive, which is like one of the earliest big bads you'd run into in the series.
Okay.
Very dark, kind of like Lovecraftian
Mhm.
almost influence, where you're like there's enemies from beyond the universe or beyond existence or whatever.
And that one had really interesting visuals. I have to say that. Very
That's
striking.
always been my favorite faction. So yeah, I was loving that, and they went to some really cool areas with that. Last year, my review for the Witch Queen actually said this was like narratively one of the best expansions for Destiny,
Mhm.
and I haven't had as much time with it as I would have liked to so far this week. It's
Right.
always hard with these live service game or
It is.
expansions
You
to
have to
review these
wait
things.
for them to come out. Yeah.
Yeah. But so far, I think it's potentially one of the best expansions for it, period, because it's got
Really.
those quality of life things. It's continuing that narrative thread. Like they've really started to pull the narrative in the right direction and how they execute it.
Mhm.
And the quality of life things are huge. Like there's much more guidance for players now. When you log in, there's a thing being like, okay, you've done this, this, and this. We're putting you at this rank. Here's the thing you should be doing next. So like I've been playing the game for a long time, but I'm not like I don't do the high end raids. I'm not like a
Right.
super
Right.
high end game player. So I was placed at like rank 6.
Mhm.
So it's like, okay, you've done this, this, and that. Do the Lightfall campaign, mess around with this stuff, and then
Right.
like you'll get ranked up and you get your next list of kind of goals, which is kind of huge because it's always been kind of vague for people,
Mhm.
especially since they've moved into like the live service model where each week there's new story content
Mhm.
effectively. So if you
Yeah.
miss out, like sometimes you might log in and you're like 3 or 4 weeks ahead in the story if you just jump
Right.
to the nearest thing. Um, yeah, you put Destiny is back in the down as the topic for this, and that's a great way to put it. Like it's a great time to get into the games and check it out. It's between that free trial and what the expansion pack is doing. I think this is probably like one of the highest points the game's been at.
Now, for someone that might not have like gotten to this point, is it easy to jump into Destiny? How hard would it to be to say I'm going to get Destiny? It looks like it's a thing I want to jump into. Is it insurmountable? Is it like WoW, where you have like basically people just are going to crush you as soon as you jump into the game?
This is actually we should do a story on this because, like I said, I am deep in the trenches. I've
Yeah.
read some of the supplementary like materials. I'm a big Destiny. I have a collection of collectibles and stuff like that. Not like a lore master, but I know what's going on narratively. I'm at the current story point all the time. I don't know what it looks like if you log in with an entirely fresh
Yeah.
account right now. So I would love to see that perspective actually from someone else on staff, or even if there's anyone else listening who's got some perspective on that for us.
Right.
I think mechanically it might be one of the best ways to do that now that you have this in place because
Right.
again, there's that guidance, right? Like it's been like saying like, oh, at your level, you should be checking out this activity that's like the PvP activity, or
Right.
like Ryan, but it's like, oh, try the Trials of Osiris, which is this weekend challenge PvP event.
Mhm.
There's so much to do in the game, and they're finally guiding you through it. I think it's probably going to be one of the best ways or one of the best times to get new people on board.
It's awesome.
But again, I have a skewed perspective, so someone should on staff should help me out with this one and offer the opposite perspective.
Awesome. Cool. Awesome. I'm sure that a lot of us want to jump into Destiny. Maybe I'll try that. I probably won't. Maybe Dana will try it.
Dana, I would love to see Dana try it. Crossplay's out there,
Ooh,
so I can help you out. Chat's blowing up here.
it is.
Felt like an RPG. Never
It
saw people. Yeah.
see it's you know what? It's actually a good point because I've just like been like kind of looking at the website right now, trying to see
Yeah.
like how does one go about getting into Destiny, and it does seem like even from like kind of going back to our previous conversation, like from a consumer standpoint, it
Right.
seems somewhat confusing to see like okay, like what do I have to buy exactly to
I
get
think
into
from
Destiny?
my understanding, from what Chris has said, it is just you get the original Destiny for free or Destiny 2 for free, and then you can buy the Legacy Collection. You don't need to, and you buy Lightfall. So just Lightfall and the free game.
So, because like Lightfall plus the annual pass.
You don't necessarily need the annual pass, from what I understand. It just gives you. It's like the Fortnite thing where you get extra stuff.
Yeah, so like when the next, but like when the next season starts, I'll just like be a part of it.
Yeah, so
Is that
Dana
true?
has a great point for the record. Check out her article on gatekeeping MMOs
Mhm.
because I think a lot of that would factor into this conversation here as well. But yeah, I think so. Lightfall, the way it works when you like for me when I log in right now, there's the Lightfall campaign, which is like the
Mhm.
expansion pack story, which would have been your traditional like WoW Mists of Pandaria type thing. You have that
Right.
whole storyline
Mm-hmm.
ahead of you. They're also doing the seasonal narrative that they've been doing. Like there's still like it's season 20, if not mistaken, or
Mhm.
something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a whole separate storyline going on there, where they kind of framed it like, oh, the witness, this big battle that's finally been revealed, is fighting a
Right.
war with us on two fronts. So the Lightfall is like off on this new planet on like around Neptune at the far end of the solar system, and there's also like the war close to home. So
Right.
like the season story is closer, like set on Earth, and there's different characters involved.
So there's
There's two
still like
separate things they want you doing at the same time, or alternating, or do
That's
one
kind
then
of
the
cool.
other.
it's like there's like free content. There's like the free war you fight and the paid for war that you fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically. But I d-
See,
I don't
like
know offhand if the current season is included in Lightfall, and it's just the ones that'll like come between now and like next year that are
Mm.
included in the season pass, or if it's only the seasons in the season pass. But
That's
see, I
confusing.
liked Destiny.
it is.
I wanted to like jump back into it, but like it's just now it does seem like price is a barrier because I can't imagine spending like Lightfall by itself is $62. If the next like season thing is anywhere close to that, it's like every like what like couple of years I'm spending the price of a full game for the privilege to continue playing the game I already have. Like,
Yeah, I mean it's a thing that I've never really had a qualm with because I've always like this is my favorite shooter. Like,
I mean, like,
hmm
I think view it as an MMO is how I kind
yeah,
of see it. Whereas an MMO is gonna have all those different expansions, and if you want to keep going on with the storyline, you're gonna buy those expansions because that's where everyone's gonna do it. You can still enjoy the game without them, but you're gonna miss out on the new like cool areas, and new heroes, and new expansion stuff. But you can still play the game,
hmm
and I think that is kind of how Destiny kind of does it. And instead of having the monthly subscription, you have the season pass that gives you all those extra raids and all that other stuff.
yeah. Dana's reminding us it is an MMO.
It kind of is.
um, yeah, it's just that distinction between MMO and MMORPG
Yeah.
used to be a bigger thing. But like you say, with this, the season pass is basically replacing the subscription fee that
Yeah.
I paid for Final Fantasy 14 every month. Like,
I guess that's
you,
fair.
either way, you're still poning up every now and then, right? Like,
Yeah.
which goes on to support the development of further content. They won't keep making, or they can't support further development if you're just buying the game once 7 years ago, right? Like they have to have something on board to keep going, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a
That's how it
it's a
used to
weird
work
model, but
back in the good old days.
used to buy the game for the Nintendo, and that would just be it. Damn it.
The
And
Nintendo.
that would
Yes.
and the
Yeah.
sales of that game would support the development of the next game and on it
I'm going to throw it
went.
out there, Jordan. That's not actually true.
Wasn't it though? I mean, games back then didn't have to rely on as many like marketing deals
Because
and
they
subway
also
ads
were
and
smaller.
So,
They were smaller experiences.
yeah,
Some of
but
them could have been made in like a weekend. You can't do that anymore.
they didn't need to make money in perpetuity was the point. They kind of made their money and then they continued. It wasn't like they needed to continue to find ways to like squeeze money out of
But they
people's
also
pockets.
but it also wasn't the biggest industry in the world, and now it is.
well, and it didn't take 6 years to develop like a AAA game back then either.
No.
Like the Mario's and stuff like that were developed within a year for the most part, or like in that
Yeah.
ballpark.
I mean, some of
by
the smaller
much
games
smaller teams.
and some of the smaller games were designed literally in a few months. You can't develop a AAA game in a few months. It's just physically impossible now.
Even if you're using Unreal Engine 5
Yeah, I mean, you could
for
technically just use the Unreal thing, put in a map, put it into characters, they were done. But that's not how really game development works anymore. You theoretically could make a thing in a little shorter amount of time. It wouldn't be a game you'd want to play,
just as the galaxy is
Mm.
is constantly expanding, so is development, I
Yep.
guess. Which
especially at 4K.
So is the amount of money going into the pockets of CEOs.
yeah,
I mean,
well,
yeah, let's be clear here. They don't need to charge $80, $90 for a game. They really don't. They just want to.
Mhm.
yeah.
The
Also,
cost
the
of
high
making games never went up. It was the
also
cost of CEOs.
if the game costs more, you're going to want to get in a service that makes it cost less.
Ah, it all comes back around again. Everything's connected, man.
See my tinfoil
But
hat and we're ready to go.
before we get the tinfoil hats on, I think that's gonna do it for us this week. If you'd like to read more on these topics and more, you can find full coverage at cgmagonline.com. Be sure to follow CG Magazine on all the socials. Just search for CG Mag and you'll find us.
Mhm.
And if you have any questions or comments, you can send them to podcast@cgmagonline.com. Jordan, where can people find you?
You can find me sometimes on Instagram and sometimes on TikTok at Ninja X Jordan, or you can find me on YouTube at Ninja Jordan Reviews.
You can find me at bfry26 on Twitter and Instagram, and I guess now that's about it. That's it.
All
I,
the
I, I
socials.
mean, what social media is weird now.
Facebook,
Social media is weird.
MySpace, Friendster.
And you can find me on well, the socials at Hugathy. I've tried some other weird socials that haven't quite panned out. I'm like, what are you up to, Hive and Spoutable? Are you going anywhere? No. Anyways, yeah, that's been. I'm choking up. That's gonna do it for us this week. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week.
Peace.